As usual, stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. Netherlands versus Sweden. There's a tension in this World Cup Group F matchup that you can feel just by glancing at the group table, and it starts with one uncomfortable truth for both sides. Neither of these teams can keep the ball out of their own net. The Netherlands sit third in the group on 1 point after drawing 2-2 with Japan, a game where Ronald Koeman's squad led twice through Virgil van Dijk and Crescencio Somerville and still couldn't hold on. Sweden sit at the top after hammering Tunisia 5-1 in what might have been the most electric opening performance of this entire tournament. So you've got one team that's desperate and another that's dangerous, and both of them have been leaking goals like a roof in a rainstorm. The Netherlands haven't recorded a clean sheet in 5 consecutive matches. 5. That's not some isolated World Cup problem. It's a trend that's been quietly building since last November. They conceded to Uzbekistan in a pre-tournament friendly. They conceded to Algeria. Ecuador found a way through. Norway found a way through. And then Japan, a team that many expected the Dutch to handle with relative comfort, twice pulled level against a backline featuring 2 of the most highly rated center backs in the English Premier League, Van Dijk and Mickey van de Ven. When those two can't lock the door, the issue isn't about individual talent, it's about how the team defends collectively, and the problems are structural. Now flip the script to Sweden, and the picture is somehow even more porous. Graham Potter's side haven't kept a clean sheet in 12 straight matches. Let that settle for a second. 12 games, and in every single one, at least one goal has found its way past the Swedish backline. Potter hasn't managed a shutout since he took this job over in October 2025, and he's conceded 2 or more in 3 of his 7 competitive matches, including against Switzerland, Poland, and Greece in the lead-up to this tournament. The 3-5-2 shape he's deployed creates real attacking width through the wingbacks, but it leaves spaces between the center backs and the midfield that sharp opponents have been exploiting consistently. Even in that 5-1 demolition of Tunisia, a game Sweden controlled from start to finish, the Tunisians still pulled one back through Omar Rekik's glancing header before halftime, trimming the lead to 2-1 and proving that this Swedish defense can be breached even when the rest of the team is firing on all cylinders. And here's the thing that ties it all together. Sweden aren't just conceding goals, they're creating them at a ferocious rate. Alexander Isak, who moved to Liverpool from Newcastle in a record-breaking deal last summer, looked like a man determined to prove his fitness doubters wrong against Tunisia, scoring once and laying on 2 assists. He linked up repeatedly with Arsenal's Victor Gyökeres, who also found the net, and the interplay between those two felt completely instinctive. They swap positions without losing structure, they anticipate each other's runs, and they both possess the finishing quality to turn a half chance into a full highlight. When you aim that kind of attacking partnership at a Dutch defense that hasn't been able to keep anyone quiet for 5 straight games, you can see where the natural conclusion leads. The head-to-head record between these two nations only reinforces it. In 5 of the last 6 meetings between the Netherlands and Sweden, both teams have found the back of the net. That's not some curated window designed to tell a convenient story. It stretches across competitive qualifiers and meaningful fixtures over the past decade. And when you factor in that the Dutch, for all their defensive fragility, remain one of the most talented attacking groups in this tournament, a squad that put 2 past a well-organized Japan side without breaking much of a sweat going forward, it becomes genuinely difficult to envision a scenario where either team walks off the pitch at NRG Stadium without scoring. Koeman's side needs all 3 points here. A second consecutive draw would leave the Netherlands in a precarious position heading into their final group game against Tunisia, and a loss could be catastrophic for their knockout round hopes. That desperation will force the Dutch to commit numbers forward, which only opens up the spaces behind their high defensive line for Isak and Gyökeres to operate in transition. It's the classic World Cup dynamic where tactical necessity from both camps pushes toward the same conclusion: open play. Chances at both ends, and goals for both sides. Both teams to score is our first pick for this matchup. Group F caught fire on matchday 1, and there's no reason to believe the temperature is going to drop for this one. The 2 opening fixtures in this group produced a combined 9 goals, the Netherlands drawing Japan 2-2 and Sweden putting 5 past Tunisia in that 5-1 blowout, and the attacking quality on display in both matches wasn't a mirage. These are teams built to score, coached to attack, and now placed in a group stage situation where playing conservatively isn't really an option for either of them. Start with the Dutch qualifying campaign, which tells you everything about their ceiling when the forward line is clicking. The Netherlands went unbeaten through UEFA Group G, winning 6 and drawing 2 across 8 matches, piling up 27 goals while conceding just 4. Memphis Depay led that charge with 8 qualifying goals, and while he came off the bench against Japan after recovering from a thigh injury, his presence in this squad adds a proven scorer who can change the complexion of a match in the final third. Meanwhile, Ryan Gravenberch was arguably the most impressive Dutch player in the Japan game, setting up both goals from his midfield position at Liverpool. His range of passing and his ability to surge forward from deep created constant headaches for Japan's compact shape, and the volume of chances the Dutch generated tells you this is a team that produces enough to break through even when the opponent is well organized. Sweden's recent output is somehow even more emphatic when it comes to goal volume. 6 of their last 7 matches have featured 4 or more total goals. That's a staggering clip, and it isn't just a reflection of their own finishing, it's a byproduct of the open, transitional style Potter has instilled since taking over. The system creates chances at one end but leaves enough room for opponents to stay involved at the other, and the result is matches that keep ticking upward on the scoreboard. Against Tunisia, Brighton's Yasin Ayari hammered 2 stunning long-range efforts that didn't even register as significant chances on the XG models, the kind of goals that remind you why the numbers don't always capture what actually happens on a football pitch. Wolfsburg's Matthias Svanberg came off the bench and scored within 18 seconds of entering the match, the second fastest substitute goal in World Cup history, and that kind of depth tells you Sweden's goal threat doesn't evaporate when the starters come off. Their XG against Tunisia was only 1.36, but they put 5 in the net. When the finishing quality outstrips the expected output by that kind of margin, you're dealing with attackers who can manufacture goals from nothing. The tactical setup of this specific match only amplifies the case. The Netherlands are sitting on 1 point and simply cannot afford another draw, which means Koeman will send his side forward with urgency from the opening whistle. Sweden, sitting pretty on 3 points, know that another positive result here would effectively punch their ticket to the round of 32, so there's no incentive for Potter to sit back and absorb pressure against a team his attackers can hurt. Both sides playing on the front foot in a World Cup group stage, with qualification implications hanging over every minute, is a recipe for an open, attacking contest. The venue quietly contributes too. NRG Stadium in Houston is a retractable roof dome that will be closed for this match, creating a controlled, climate-managed environment with no wind to disrupt crossing and no rain to slow the surface. That kind of fast, indoor pitch tends to reward quick combinations and direct attacking play, which is exactly what both of these teams do best. And the history between these two keeps pointing in the same direction. 6 of the last 9 meetings between the Netherlands and Sweden have produced 3 or more goals. That's a trend that spans multiple coaching regimes, multiple eras of players, and multiple formats of competition, and it lines up perfectly with everything we're seeing from both squads right now in this tournament. Over 2.5 total goals is our second pick for this matchup. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. Germany versus Ivory Coast. There's something about Germany that makes you think they can just run over any team right now, and that's probably the most dangerous assumption you can make before a World Cup match like this one. Julian Nagelsmann's squad walked into Houston and put 7 past Curacao like it was a training exercise. And sure, that scoreline screams domination, but here's the thing most people glossed over: they still conceded. Curacao found the back of the net in the 21st minute to briefly pull level at 1 apiece, and that's a World Cup debutant doing that to a 4-time champion. It wasn't an accident or a fluke deflection either. It was a genuine breakdown in Germany's defensive structure during a transition. And that concession wasn't an outlier. 4 of Germany's last 5 matches across all competitions have seen both teams find the net, including a 4-3 win over Switzerland, a 2-1 win over Ghana, and a 2-1 win over the United States in their pre-tournament friendlies. Germany's attacking philosophy under Nagelsmann is exciting and relentless, but it comes with a cost. Joshua Kimmich and Nathaniel Brown, who combined for 3 goals and an assist against Curacao, push incredibly high up the flanks to overload the wings. That's a tactical choice that stretches opponents vertically, but it also leaves channels open behind them, and Ivory Coast have exactly the kind of athletes who thrive in that space. Jan Diomand, the 19-year-old RB Leipzig winger who won Bundesliga Rookie of the Season this year after posting 12 goals and 9 assists, put on a performance against Ecuador that Opta described as the first of its kind they've recorded since 1966, creating 5 chances, making 5 tackles, winning 11 duels, and registering 12 touches inside the opposition box, all in one match. That's not some cautious teenager feeling his way through a World Cup debut. That's a player who ran at Ecuador's backline with the confidence of someone who's been doing it all season in one of Europe's top leagues. Amad Diallo, the Manchester United winger who came off the bench in the 56th minute against Ecuador, didn't even need 35 minutes to change the trajectory of Ivory Coast's tournament, burying a first-time finish from Wilfried Singo's square pass in the 90th minute to steal all 3 points. Diallo has 6 international goals since October, more than any other Ivory Coast player in that stretch, and the expectation heading into this one is that he'll start instead of being held in reserve. So you've got 2 explosive wide threats running at a backline that is structurally committed to pushing its fullbacks forward, and that's a recipe for danger. Ivory Coast aren't just surviving on vibes here either. They scored 25 goals across 10 World Cup qualifying matches in the KEF section, with 8 different players netting twice, and they failed to score in only one of their last 13 games. That one blank was a goalless draw away to Gabon in qualifying, hardly a pattern. The World Cup itself has been kind to this market too. Through the first round of group stage matches, both teams have scored in roughly 2 out of every 3 games, which is a rate that tracks with what we've seen from tournaments in this expanded 48-team format where teams play with purpose from the opening whistle. Germany will almost certainly have the ball more than Ivory Coast and create more chances. Nobody disputes that. But the question with this pick isn't whether Germany score, it's whether the Elephants can punch back, and everything about their personnel, their form, and Germany's defensive tendencies says they can. Both teams to score is our first pick for this matchup. Both of these squads walked out of matchday 1 with wins, and that context might be the single most important variable nobody's really emphasizing enough when it comes to how many goals hit the back of the net in Toronto. A win for either side here essentially locks in knockout round qualification in the expanded format, so neither team has any tactical incentive to sit deep, absorb pressure, and play for a draw. Germany's opener was the most prolific single-game performance by any team in the tournament so far, with 7 goals, 26 total shots, 12 on target, and an expected goals figure north of 3.9. Now, Curacao is not Ivory Coast, and Emers Faye's side will be significantly harder to break down, but that volume of shot creation doesn't just disappear against tougher opposition, it compresses. Instead of 26 shots, maybe Germany take 14 or 16, but those will be higher quality looks because of the movement between Jamal Musiala, Florian Wirtz, and Kai Havertz, 3 players who instinctively find pockets of space between defensive lines. Speaking of Havertz, the man just scored in the Champions League final for Arsenal against PSG 3 weeks ago, becoming only the 3rd player in history to score in a Champions League final for 2 different clubs alongside Cristiano Ronaldo and Mario Mandzukic. He then turned around and bagged a brace against Curacao. That's 5 goals in his last 5 appearances for club and country, and it's the kind of form that doesn't just evaporate because the opposition wears a different kit. Germany's 10-match winning streak is their longest since 1979, and across their last 5 qualifying matches alone they scored 16 goals while conceding just 1. Ivory Coast's opener against Ecuador was a tighter affair, finishing 1-0, but the underlying numbers told a much more open story. Ecuador hit the crossbar 3 times, with John Yeboah, Alan Minda, and Elie Wahi all rattling the frame of the goal. Ivory Coast themselves generated an expected goals figure of roughly 1.7 against an Ecuador defense that only conceded 5 goals across 18 qualifying games. The actual play was far more chaotic than the final score suggested, and the second half in particular opened up considerably once Diallo and Diomand started running at Ecuador's tiring backline. BMO Field in Toronto, an outdoor venue on the shores of Lake Ontario, should provide near-perfect conditions with temperatures around 24 degrees Celsius under a mix of sun and cloud and a gentle breeze. There's nothing in the forecast that would suppress attacking football, no extreme wind, no heat-related sluggishness, no heavy pitch. Ivory Coast's defensive qualifying record, 8 wins and 2 draws with 0 goals conceded in 10 matches, looks imposing until you consider the caliber of opposition. Seychelles, Burundi, and the Gambia don't create the kinds of problems that Musiala's dribbling in tight spaces or Wirtz's ability to thread passes through compressed lines will present. Ecuador, a legitimate South American qualifier, already showed that Ivory Coast's defensive shell can be stressed, and Germany are substantially more talented in possession than Ecuador. The flip side of this is that Ivory Coast won't just park the bus. Their entire squad is making a first World Cup appearance. The nation hasn't been at a World Cup since 2014, and they've never advanced past the group stage in 3 prior attempts. Faye will want his team to play with ambition, especially after the confidence boost of snatching a late winner against Ecuador. Both teams scoring, combined with Germany's relentless attacking volume and Ivory Coast's motivation to push forward, creates an environment where the ball should find the net more than a couple of times. Over 2.5 total goals is our second pick for this matchup. Ecuador versus Curacao. There's something you feel in a World Cup group stage that no regular season match can replicate, and it's the weight of what happens when a team with 0 points stares at another team with 0 points and both of them really know, that another loss means the plane tickets home get booked early. Ecuador walked off the pitch in Philadelphia with their heads down after Ivory Coast stole all 3 points in the dying seconds of their opener. And here's the thing, that loss doesn't tell the whole story. Latry dominated long stretches of that match, hit the crossbar twice through John Yeboah and Alan Minda, and generated an expected goals figure that said they deserved more than a shutout. They were a crossbar's width away from a different conversation entirely. Now they come to Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City against a Curacao side making its first ever World Cup appearance, a nation of roughly 150,000 people that became the smallest country in history to qualify for this tournament. Curacao lost 7-1 against Germany, and yes, that final score was ugly, but for 37 minutes the Blue Wave matched a 4-time world champion stride for stride. Livano Comenencia buried Curacao's first ever World Cup goal in the 21st minute to level the score at 1 apiece, and the Curacao supporters inside Houston Stadium erupted like they'd won the whole thing. That moment matters here. It tells you something about the mentality of this group, because a squad that simply rolls over doesn't equalize against Germany, it just absorbs punishment. Curacao scored, and they didn't score by accident. They scored because they pressed, won a loose ball, and finished through traffic. Before the World Cup, Curacao also found the net against Scotland in a 4-1 loss and Australia in a 5-1 loss, which means both teams scored in 3 of Curaçao's last 4 matches. That's not a fluke, that's a pattern. Dick Advocaat, the 78-year-old Dutch coaching legend who is now the oldest manager in World Cup history, has this group organized with a compact 4-3-1-2 shape that invites pressure and then looks to release Tahith Chong and the Bacuna brothers on the counter. Chong, the Sheffield United midfielder who came up through the Manchester United Academy, is capable of creating something out of nothing in transition, and Leandro Bacuna at 34 years old still has the composure to pick a pass under duress. Ecuador, on the other hand, will throw everything forward because they have no choice. A loss here in their World Cup is essentially over before they even face Germany. Moises Caicedo will push higher, Gonzalo Plata will look to stretch the pitch, and Ener Valencia will be the focal point of an attack that needs goals badly. When a team as talented as Ecuador plays with that kind of desperation and commits numbers forward, gaps appear behind them. Ivory Coast showed that Ecuador's defense, as good as it is, can be caught, and Curaçao's willingness to stay in matches and take their chances in transition makes this a game where both nets should see action. Scattered thunderstorms are in the forecast for Kansas City tonight, with temperatures hovering around the low 80s at kickoff, and on a slick surface at an open-air stadium, the ball skids, defenders slip, and the unexpected happens more often than you'd think. Combine that with 2 teams that genuinely cannot afford a draw, and you've got a recipe for end-to-end moments where both goalkeepers are going to be tested. Both teams to score is our first pick for this matchup. Ecuador's performance against Ivory Coast frustrated a lot of people who expected Latry to roll in with 3 points, and it's easy to look at that shutout and assume this team can't put the ball in the net. That would be a mistake. The chances were there in Philadelphia. Yeboah rattled the frame, Minda did the same, and Plata forced a strong save from distance. The issue wasn't creation, it was conversion, and there's a massive difference between facing an Ivory Coast defense that went unbeaten through 10 qualifying matches without conceding a single goal and facing a Curacao backline that just let in 7 against Germany. This is like comparing a vault door to a screen door. Ecuador's squad is loaded with players who perform at the highest club levels in Europe every single week. William Pacho lifted the Champions League trophy with Paris Saint-Germain, and his defensive partner Piero Hincapié played in the same final wearing Arsenal's colors. Caicedo anchors Chelsea's midfield and has the range to pick apart a deep block with switching passes that turn defenses inside out. Kendry Páez, the 19-year-old Chelsea talent on loan at River Plate, has the kind of fearlessness that only a teenager at his first World Cup can bring. These are players built for breaking down exactly the kind of low block that Curacao will try to set up. What makes this even more compelling is that Ecuador's manager, Sebastián Becassetti, understands that goal difference could be the difference between going home and advancing. With Germany and Ivory Coast both sitting on 3 points at the top of Group E, Ecuador can't just win this match, they need to win it by a healthy margin to give themselves any chance of staying alive if results go sideways on the final match day. That changes how they approach the game. This isn't a side that's going to score once and then park the bus. Becassetti will keep the foot on the gas because the math demands it. Look at what Ecuador did in their recent friendlies when they faced opponents closer to Curacao's level. They beat Guatemala 3-0 and Saudi Arabia 2-1. Against teams they're expected to dominate, this squad can put up numbers. Now consider what Curacao's defense has looked like against quality opposition. Germany put 7 past them. Australia, a team that isn't exactly renowned for its attacking firepower, scored 5. Scotland managed 4. In 3 of Curacao's last 4 matches, opponents have scored at least 4 goals against them. That's not a trend you can coach your way out of in 5 days between group stage matches. Eloy Room is a solid enough goalkeeper at 37 years old, but the defenders in front of him, Armando Obispo, Devron Fonville, Richedly Bazoer, they were overrun against Germany, and the structural problems that caused the collapse aren't going to magically disappear against an Ecuador side that's better organized and more motivated than they were a week ago. Valencia came into this World Cup with 49 goals across his Ecuador career, the nation's all-time leading scorer and the man responsible for their last 6 World Cup goals stretching back to 2014. He hasn't scored yet in this tournament, and if you know anything about strikers of his caliber, a blank in the opener only sharpens the hunger. The stage is set for Ecuador to treat this as the match where they open the floodgates, because they need to, because they can, and because the defense standing across from them has shown repeatedly that it cannot handle sustained pressure from teams with genuine quality in the final third. Ecuador team total over 2.5 goals is our second pick for this matchup. Tunisia versus Japan. Tunisia walks into this fixture sitting at the absolute bottom of Group F, 0 points, a goal difference of -4, and a fresh coaching change that would rattle any team at any level, let alone the World Cup. That 5-1 defeat against Sweden wasn't just a loss, it was a full-blown organizational collapse that led to the sacking of Sabri Lamouchi before the sun came up the next morning. And the man they've brought in to pick up the pieces is Hervé Renard, a coach with a fascinating resume, 2 Africa Cup of Nations titles with Zambia and Ivory Coast, a famous 2-1 upset of Argentina while managing Saudi Arabia at the 2022 World Cup. But here's the thing, he was given less than a week to prepare for this match. He didn't even get a full training camp. He got a few sessions in Monterrey in a squad that just absorbed 5 goals on the world's biggest stage. Japan, on the other hand, has been on a completely different trajectory. The Samurai Blue were the first non-host nation to punch their ticket to this tournament, finishing atop their Asian qualifying group with a record of 7 wins, 2 draws, and just 1 loss across the third round. And in the second round, they were perfect. 6 wins from 6 with 24 goals scored and 0 conceded. That's not a team sneaking into a World Cup. That's a team that dominated the path to get here. And they carried that form into their pre-tournament friendlies, beating Scotland 1-0, beating England 1-0 at Wembley of all places, and beating Iceland 1-0, 3 consecutive shutout victories against established sides. Their opening match against the Netherlands ended 2-2, but honestly that result flattered the Dutch more than it hurt Japan. Daichi Kamada, the Crystal Palace midfielder, slotted home the equalizer in the 88th minute to rescue a point, and Keito Nakamura had already scored earlier to peg the Netherlands back after they took the lead. Japan showed something really important in that game: composure under pressure on the biggest stage, falling behind twice and clawing back each time without panicking. Now yes, Japan will be without Takefusa Kubo for this one. The Real Sociedad attacker suffered a knee injury during that Netherlands match and stayed behind in Nashville for treatment instead of traveling with the squad to Monterrey. That's a legitimate loss. But the depth this team carries is significant, with players like Ito, a 33-year-old veteran who provided 10 assists in just 9 qualifying appearances, and Koki Ogawa, who registered an assist off the bench against the Netherlands, ready to step in. Hajim Moriyasu has been managing this national team since 2018 and has built a squad identity that doesn't collapse when individual pieces are missing. This is the same coach who beat Germany and Spain at the 2022 World Cup, and those results weren't flukes, they were products of a system. The head-to-head history between these two nations tells a very one-sided story. Across 6 all-time meetings, Japan has won 5 of them. Tunisia's only victory came in a Kirin Cup friendly back in 2022, and in competitive fixtures, they've never beaten Japan, not once. Their most significant meeting was at the 2002 World Cup, and Japan won that 1-2-0. This isn't a rivalry. This is a matchup where one side has historically controlled the other. Tunisia's form beyond the Sweden debacle isn't encouraging either. In their pre-tournament friendlies, they lost 5-0 against Belgium, lost 1-0 to Austria, drew 0-0 with Canada, and barely squeaked past Haiti 1-0. That's a team that won a single match in 4 tries leading into the biggest tournament on the planet, and the one they did win was against Haiti by the slimmest margin possible. The new manager bounce is a real phenomenon in football. Renard knows how to motivate, but motivation doesn't fix structural issues in a matter of days, especially when the squad's confidence looks this fragile. Japan 3-way money line is our first pick for this matchup. Tunisia's inability to put the ball in the net has been one of the most consistent stories surrounding this squad over the past several months. In 7 consecutive matches, this team has failed to score more than a single goal in any of them. Think about that for a second. 7 straight games, and they couldn't manage 2 goals in any one of them. Against Belgium, they were blanked. Against Austria, blanked again. Against Canada, 0-0. Against Haiti, they managed 1. Against Sweden, their lone goal came from center-back Omar Reki, not from any attacker on the pitch. The underlying numbers from that Sweden match are even more telling than the scoreline. Tunisia generated just 0.28 expected goals across 90 minutes, meaning the quality of chances they created was close to non-existent. They scored 1 goal that massively overperformed what the chances warranted, and that came from a set piece off a defender's head, not from sustained attacking play. This is a team that simply cannot generate offensive opportunities against quality opposition. Japan's defensive record this year tells the other side of that equation. Across their last 16 matches, the Samurai Blue have kept 12 clean sheets. 12. Their qualifying campaign saw them concede a total of 3 goals in 16 fixtures. And those weren't all against minnows either. That stretch included matches against Australia and Saudi Arabia. The organized back 3 that Moriyasu deploys, featuring Hiroki Ito of Bayern Munich alongside Shogo Taniguchi and Tsuyoshi Watanabe, proved capable of containing the Netherlands' attack to just 0.79 expected goals in the opener. If the Dutch, with all their individual quality and Premier League and Eredivisie firepower, couldn't regularly threaten Japan's backline, the question becomes what exactly Tunisia, a team averaging barely a quarter of an expected goal against top-tier opponents, is supposed to do differently. And here's where Renard's appointment actually works against Tunisia's scoring potential rather than for it. Every coach who takes over a team mid-crisis follows the same playbook. You stop the bleeding first. You don't walk into a locker room that just conceded 5 goals and tell the team to go out and attack with abandon. You organize, you compact, you try to stay in the game. Renard did exactly that with Saudi Arabia at the 2022 World Cup. His entire approach against Argentina was about discipline, shape, and taking the rare chances that came from transition play. The likely tactical setup from Tunisia will be to sit deep and try to frustrate Japan, which inherently limits their own offensive output. They can't simultaneously park bodies behind the ball and generate wave after wave of attacking chances. Kaishu Sano anchoring Japan's midfield alongside Kamada provides a shield in front of that back 3 that rarely gets bypassed. And with Hannibal Mejbri being Tunisia's primary creative outlet, a 23-year-old Burnley midfielder who has to carry the entire attacking burden for a team that simply doesn't score, the pathway for Tunisia to consistently threaten the net just isn't there. Both teams have scored in only one of Tunisia's last 15 matches. That's a staggering stat. In 14 of their last 15 games, at least one team has been shut out, and more often than not it's been Tunisia that couldn't find the net. The historical head-to-head in terms of goals further supports the picture. Only one of the last 4 meetings between these two nations has produced more than 2 combined goals, and that was the Kirin Cup friendly where Japan rested several key players. In competitive settings and serious matches, this fixture tends to be tight, controlled, and low event for scoring, which aligns perfectly with what both teams' current form and tactical tendencies suggest. Under 2.5 total goals is our second pick for this matchup. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.